Friends, welcome back to the show. I want to ask you a quick question. So if your power went out tomorrow, how long did you really last? I ask myself that question sometimes. But my next guest is a very special one. My friend Zach is here to talk about his new book. I think you're going to love this because this whole conversation around AI is literally getting out of control. So I wanted to have him on the show to talk about what our future is going to look like, because his next book is literally all about this. He says that most of us have lost our trade skills. That once we've made the ones that the type of skills that made us resilient as a culture, as a people, the plumbers, the electricians, the people we don't really think about that are making our cities hum. These are the people, the drywallers, the list never really ends. However, in our culture here, we've been obsessed with knowledge work, sitting at a desk and doing computer work, which, let's be real, my man Zach has been a part of that world, and he was a part of developing AI and all of these great things. But at the same time, there's a flip to that coin, and my man Zach is here to tell us all about that and talk about his new book, The Trade Gap: Break the Rules, Learn a Skill, Own Your Future. Zach, welcome to the show, my man.
Yeah, man, it's so good to be here. I know you and I go back now many years. I consider you friends, so it's great to catch up, and even greater to be here to talk about yet another book, which is a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, man, yet another book. So I'm really excited because, obviously this conversation that you've been a part of for a while now, man. Ever since I met you, we started having this conversation like 4 or 5 years ago at this point. I really don't even remember. Yeah, it's been about 4 years. But this new book, it caught my attention. First of all, I love the cover. Great title. So kudos to whoever developed all that. But I want to know what excited you or what motivated you to write this new book about the trade gap.
The same thing that has motivated me to write any book, which is hard-earned experience through pain and suffering. So, with my first book, Turning Feral, it was all about the idea of working through divorce, moving out to the middle of nowhere, becoming more self-reliant. This book is a somewhat extension on that same concept, but as you alluded to, I've actually been a part of the knowledge workforce for the last 12 years, specifically in artificial intelligence. And even when I started to become more self-reliant on my own, I still worked in the space of knowledge workers. Right. And in 2023, I went through my first experience of an unexpected job loss, a layoff through a major publicly traded company, something I had avoided for 12 years. And it happened to be at a time when it was really hard at the level I was at to find another job. And I had built up the 6 months of manifest destiny we're all told to have in the white collar community of like 6 months of savings, you'll be good. You'll be able to bounce back, get on your feet. And after 6 months, I still didn't have a job. Then 7 months, then 8 months. And I had young children, 2 mortgages, all the things that went along with the lifestyle I had before, but no way to pay the bills. And fortunately for me, in that time that I had been still employed in the knowledge working space, I had started to accrue skills. Specifically for me, it was taxidermy, trapping, things that aligned with the outdoor lifestyle that I had been building. And I was actually able to lean on those things to pay the bills. Ultimately, I did get rehired into a similar AI knowledge working role. All was well. But it opened my eyes to the fragility of A, the knowledge working economy, and B, the fact that so many people don't have skills to fall back on in the event of something going wrong in the knowledge working economy.
Yeah, man. And I feel like you did. I mean, I remember when you were kind of going through that rough patch of trying to find a job and those kinds of things. But I do remember you being very optimistic, which is, I think, one that's just innate as part of like human mentality, and different people have it at different levels, but just having like an optimistic perspective is such a powerful tool and skill to have. Like if there's one skill, one thing that you should develop, I think personally as a human being, is just you got to be optimistic and use that to weave it like it's like a thread. You got to weave it with the things that you're doing and never give up. And you really showed that, man. So talk to me about, there's a lot of misconceptions about trade work. Like, I'll be real. One of my neighbors, like literally my next door neighbor, amazing human being, bro. He owns a plumbing company. And we talk about this all the time, right? And he has a really hard time trying to find good, talented work, right? He's like, dude, if I'm not recruiting them or like trying to grab them from another company, they're not coming in. And if they are, like these bigger plumbing companies or whatever are grabbing them up. And so he has thought about like starting like a plumbing school just to like help teenager, young people get into the trade. And he's like, but dude, everybody just wants to be on their phone. So like, what do I do? And that's a good question. Like, I'm like, I don't know. That's a really good question. But I feel like with AI taking everybody's jobs, maybe, I don't know. I was like, I might be a plumber too, bro. Like, depending on how things go, you might need to hire me. But no, what are the like misconceptions when people think about trade work, and this balance of where we're headed? What are your thoughts around that stuff?
Well, I want to be clear and upfront. Like, I am not a tradesman. My income to date has not come from trades. I have augmented my income with trade work as an adult, but it's not something I was exposed to. And I hope where I go next will answer your question. But, I grew up, I'm 37 now, grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. And as long and far back as I can remember in my public education, sometimes explicitly said, but definitely not explicitly expressed, was the fact that if you went into the trades or the like local vocational school, you were less than. You were not the smart kid. That's where the dumb kids went, period. And it was known. And like even in high school, I had a teacher who had a hard hat and a fake college application on her desk. This might have been like a civics class or something. And she had a little like bolded tag in front of it that said, "You choose."
Wow.
Right. And it was like, do you want to pick the trades path and be miserable and poor, or do you want to go to college and have all the opportunity left to you?
Right.
And as a young kid, of course, this college or bust mentality, I went that way. It's like trades are not for me. I'm not a dumb kid. I'm smart. I can do these things. That's what I thought.
Right.
And that in researching for the book seemed to be a very pervasive thing across the United States. Like there were pockets of like very rural areas that wasn't the case, but largely that's the experience of most kids in our generation and the following generations. And to get back to your question about like what is misunderstood about the trades, like in exploring different things, the history, interviewing people for the book, it's very clear to me. And now having dabbled in trades myself, getting a welding cert, going on my path to get my electrical journeyman's license part-time, the biggest misconception is exactly the thing we were told, which is this is where dumb people go. Because I have found some of the most intellectual stimulation in learning about electricity or learning to weld. And I think that is probably the biggest misconception, especially for young people, is that it's not a smart man's job. And that is the furthest thing from the truth.
Right. Man, I'm so glad you brought that up because so I went to Aloha High School in Aloha, Oregon, which is like right next to Beaverton, Oregon. And so there was a huge diversity, right? A lot of Latino, a lot of African. Anyway, I remember going to my counselor, and I was like, I want to go to college and stuff, but I don't know I was like a sophomore, maybe a junior. And he goes, well, maybe you should, like, he's pulled up my grades, they're not fantastic or anything. He's like, maybe you should think about like go and take a auto mechanic class and like take the welding class or whatever. And I'm like, well, like you said, like I'm smarter than that, but I did take the auto mechanic class and I friggin' loved it. I loved working, like we took apart an engine and whatever. And there's the woodworking class. So, and eventually I took drafting class, which is what I loved, and fell in love with architecture because I had my abilities to draw. So that was where my gifts were like, oh, this is like a pathway, right? Mm-hmm. But what I loved was like, there's a love and hate moment in that. Was one that he didn't really see that I would go to college. So he was like, here's like plan B for you, bro. You should go like learn a trade,
Mhm.
which again, like you said, is not like looked down upon or anything. It's just more like you're probably better off doing this because your grades ain't going to get you there. You don't have the money. The financial aid is going to not, like it's already like this assumptions about the human, right? As opposed to like, no, like really think about. But the other thing is he made me kind of go take these different classes,
Yep.
which was cool because it opened up my eyes to like, okay,
and
do I want to do this?
And you're lucky you had those classes. Like
Yes.
a lot of the schools that I was at, like they didn't even
Don't have that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened after I graduated, the basketball coach, or he was amazing, Coach Yarnell, he actually became principal. And he heavily leaned into the trades and really turned that school more towards the trades world, because he also saw, later on, I actually interviewed him at my print shop. And he was like, I saw everything go towards the technology and the whatever. And then there was going to be this like huge opportunity. He's like, dude, a good electrician makes amazing money, and like a good woodworker makes amazing money. And I'm like, no one told us they made a bunch of money. Like, no, first of all, and you have to be pretty smart. Like, you have to be really good with your hands, and that's a skill. And you have to be really smart because it's numbers, it's physics, it's all of these things. But you just taught sort of like on the job. And let's be real, bro. Like, man, universities have played a game on us, right? Because for a long time, to learn to be an architect, you just went and worked with an architect. Like that's how you became an architect. So technically, you learned on a job anyway. So that is interesting, and what's happening in our world, and as far as our schools, where are you seeing like are schools going back to that, or schools still like that's the dumb way to go? Like, where are we right now with that world?
It's a mixed bag. I think there is a slow resurgence. I think, and I go into a lot of the statistics in the book, but at a high level, for every 5 tradesmen, pick your top 5,
Right.
only 2 are replacing them.
Right.
And we've built this culture of call a guy or call a gal, right? Like my toilet leaks, call the plumber. In the past, the supply was always there because we had tradesmen coming out of the 80s into the 90s where they could come reasonable price, fix whatever your issue was, and with mechanics, etc. But that I really cling to because it's when I graduated high school is in 2007. There were 3.3 million high school graduates across the U.S. 67% of those graduates went on to some 2 or 4 year higher education, pay to play. Some smaller percentage, like 5%, probably went to the military, which you could argue you might likely learn a trade in there. Another like 17% just didn't go anywhere, didn't do anything beyond high school. And then only like 12% went to trade schools. Wow. So out of 3.3 million kids in 1 year, only about 250,000 went on to like a trade vocational school. And that's 1 year. And you think about that stat and you think, well, those 67% of people who are going to learn non-skilled work are going to rely on skilled labor to do the things that they can't, the plumbing, the mechanical. But you take that 1 year, you do it the next and the next and the next, and that rift grows and grows and grows eventually till we're at a point now where, for every 5 tradesmen that retire, only 2 are replacing them. So what happened? Wow. You call the plumber. I talk about in the book. I had a water heater leak, like last year or something. Floors bowed, everything. Thankfully I knew where to turn the water off. Call around to a bunch of places locally in the metropolitan area, and it's like, yeah, I can be there in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's like a minimum amount to show.
Oh my God.
And then I Googled it, and it's a $15 part. So of course, like I ordered it. I ended up fixing it myself. I was forced into it, but you see the problem now. People are, the demand is so high, but the supply is so low. Now, again, talking about opportunity, people can charge more. But also for critical things, you're not going to get the response you want. You're not going to get that quick hit. And then it expands out from there just for like our country's infrastructure, our sanitation world. It ripples so far that these things that we need to function as a society or have come to expect
Right.
deteriorate.
Right. Man, that's so eye-opening. And also, you're right. I think you write in your book, like we're in a very dangerous place in that, like, so much of our infrastructure altogether relies on really skilled people, and we don't have the robots yet. Like, we don't have the AI. Like, people, we're going to be replaced by robots in a couple of years, and it's like we don't have them yet. So, and if we do, like, are they going to be that freaking good? Like, you know what I mean? Like, are they? I question
Are you
that.
going to drag a robot into every single new construction build to hang sheetrock? No.
No, dude. Like,
Frame
sheetrock is
houses,
so
no.
complicated. I don't care what anybody says. Like, I've worked on construction sites. I've dug ditches. I've done all those. Like, just like every house is different. The terrain. There are so many things, and you see some of these new robots. They can barely walk. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you know what I mean? And yeah, that may change pretty fast, and I may be completely wrong, and I kind of hope I'm not. But okay, if that's the case, then we still need to, like, the work is still going to be there, and there's going to be so much amount of work that needs to be done that I don't think enough robots can do it.
No.
But at the end of the day, we still need our skilled labor. Like, when someone, like, right now, I'll kind of share a story. My nephew is 17 years old. He's a senior, good kid, smart, all that good stuff. And man, we had a really deep conversation. Like, he's like, I don't really know what I want to do. Right. Like, he's just like, I don't know what I want to do. And I'm like, bro, you have all the opportunity in the world, like, obviously he's first generation and we're the refugees. Right. So it's like, my dad was like, you better figure it out. You better go fucking hustle and go build something. Cause but with him, it's different. It's like he has opportunity, but he's also like being short-sighted. He's not really seeing where he can take himself, and that it's stepping stones. He feels like he has to decide who he's going to be at 70, you know what I'm saying? And like do the career thing. And I'm like, bro, God, the school system, sadly, is still stuck in that. Got to pick a career, decide where you're going to go, and like go do that forever. And it's like, are they still really teaching this at 2025? This is insanity.
Yep.
And so, like, what do you say to someone like that is around that age, thinking about future, doesn't really know or how to decide? What are some thoughts that you may have?
This is obviously with hindsight, right? And I don't know if I went and talked to my former 17-year-old self, like if I would listen, because I probably wouldn't, because I'm kind of stubborn.
Yeah. Most of us were.
Even if like Future Zach came back and said, invest in Bitcoin, I'd be like, you're a moron. I would argue with myself. But like with your nephew, like there's two people I wrote to in this book. One is your nephew, and one is the other persona of like the knowledge worker, the person like me who went down that path for better or worse and now wants to learn skills. But for the young man, the 17-year-old, actually, ironically, earlier today, I spoke to a whole group of young men on the Apogee podcast. And we were kind of talking a little bit about this. And, my story is a cautionary tale, but it's one of at least recognize that there are more opportunities out there than just college. That, not to say take your time, but I am not against the credentialing of college. I would be the biggest hypocrite in the world if I said otherwise, because I did get a master's degree from Johns Hopkins University. That has opened up doors for me in the knowledge working space that otherwise would not have been open if I did not pursue that. Sure. But I have talked to so many people who frankly earn way more than I do, who, out of school did go into construction, did dabble and jump around. They might have started in like the ditch digging and then gravitated towards something that they were either interested in or had an aptitude for: welding, plumbing, knitting. I don't even care. You can go outside of the construction realm, any sort of skill. But then they did go back to college eventually because there was a value that they found, like, hey, if I go and get an engineering degree and get that credentialing, then I can maybe open up my own company or my own construction business. But they did it with the mindset of knowing what the means to the end was. My biggest concern with college as we do it now is if your nephew, say, goes to Oregon State, not knowing what he wants to do, there is a financial implication for that it's hard to claw back out of when you don't know what you want to do. So my argument would be, if you don't know what you want to do, like if you're dead set to be a lawyer, then you're going to have to go to school. So by all means, you're committed to that, do it. But if you're like most 17-year-olds, and like I was, I didn't really know. I think getting some real world job experience where there's demand, and that might be construction, that might be going to get your CDL. Or if you're interested in technology, go getting your FAA drone pilot's license and doing some like commercial shoots for people who need to film in wilderness areas. I don't know. But doing something practical with your hands and letting that be at least a guide. You might find out you never want to work on a construction site again, and that's fine too. But being open to stuff that is not debt first is probably going to help you out in the long run.
I love that. It's a really good answer. Yeah. I kind of, my response to him was, you like, first and foremost, and you were tapped into that too, is just like, how do you learn about yourself? How do you know what you like and don't like if you aren't going to go try something? So first things first, you got to try. And, one of the best things I learned was like, you want to own a coffee shop? Like I told my dad that when I was young. He's like, you got to go work at a coffee shop, right? Like from the ground up, you got to know every single thing. And I realized, I probably don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Like you want to own something, you want to do something, like you can do that, but you should probably go learn it first or go do it to see if you actually want to do that. And I did go see like an architect, and I did love the architecture world. Like I did want to do that until I got out and I couldn't get work, and because it was like 2010, which I learned, I leaned into a skill that I learned, which was screen printing. Again, a very manual labor, kind of thing, and built a whole business around that. But it still required a lot of other skills, like talking to people, sales, marketing. So it's kind of cool. Like when you actually think about it, I feel like skills are like a stepping stone, right? And one thing will lead to the next, with the lead to the next. And it's really the combination of those sets of skills that can actually ultimately provide the best use of the thing, or you may own the thing that you can hire people for or whatever. So I love that perspective. But yeah, don't get into debt. Like if you could be paid to learn a thing, like that's the way to go, right? That's how I learned the publishing industry. I joined Scribe because when I sold my shop, I was like, well, I have this marketing skill and I have this ability in design, but I don't really know publishing very well. So let me go do that. And that's really what I did. I was like, I don't want to go back to school to learn English per se, to learn how to write. Let me go work at a publishing company and see what's needed and see where I can fit in.
And you wrote.
And I wrote, and I learned to write. I still, because I was around amazing writers who expected high levels of writing, which was scary, to be honest with you. But it elevated my writing so much. It made me so much better. So you're right. Again, you're around other people who are going to teach you things that you may not even know you needed to know. Well, so I love that, man. That's a great frame.
Your point of the stepping stones is great. Like my mental framing now has started to go into this Venn diagram. So I think traditionally in our culture, you have two big circles. It's like blue collar trade work, white collar knowledge work. But I actually see it like a Venn diagram. Like you will have people who were born to swing a hammer who are never going to pick up a book. That's a fact. You have people on the other end of the spectrum that were born with innate high IQ, whatever, that want to write white papers on some obscure algorithm and spend their entire life dedicated to that one tiny little piece. Never going to pick up a hammer. But in the real world, that overlap between people who, have some skills and have white collar knowledge work is overlapping. And if you are a blue collar worker, like there are things you can pick up from white collar knowledge workers, like business skills. You can grow your business, the marketing, everything else. And the argument in my book is the white collar knowledge workers, you actually can be better at your job by learning some hard skills on the side, whether it's the confidence or even just the chemistry underlying some of the stuff you might do on the side. So I think there's an overlap that we're missing because we've just kept these things so divided in our country, whereas we should all be trying to be generally educated, like truly generally educated, picking up skills you might not think, and that's a stepping stone to something else you might not see. I think it's a great analogy.
Yeah, there's a quote that I absolutely love, but the more I've grown up, the more I understood it. And it's don't be a wandering don't be a wandering generality, be a meaningful specific. But I feel like the more I've gotten older, I realize like at first you need to be a generalist, right? Like really learn, as much as you can about all kinds of different things, and then become a specialist, right? Like it's like taking all of those things and funneling them. And I feel like that's how my life has been. It's like really learning from different people, different things, and like just applying specifically to this thing now has made that thing sharp, right? But you don't want to start specific and then become general. I feel like that's harder to do, right? But you said something
either, right? So like you're a great example. Like you start wide, you start narrowing in on areas where you have aptitude, and then of course you want to specialize in that. You want to double down, but you also don't want to get stuck there. You still have to keep your eyes open to see what the next thing might be. You never want to be like a mile wide, an inch deep. You want to be like a mile wide with a few really deep pockets of expertise, but you got to taste other stuff.
Yeah, that's really well said. You said something about like in your obviously in your title, you said break the rules. What do you mean by breaking the rules?
It's exactly the thing that we're just talking about now. Like at least in our country, I can't speak for others that I haven't lived in, but there is this expectation in general public education that the measure of success is go to college. So my idea of break the rules, learn a skill, own your future is regardless of where you're at in your stage of life, push back against that. Like there's nothing preventing anybody from learning anything today. Like we have a supercomputer in every one of our pockets. Let curiosity drive you and learn something new. And my definition of a trade is extremely loose. I could like learn to knit. Frankly, like build up, like make a pair of socks for someone for Christmas this year. That's a trade in my mind. That's something you can fall back on or potentially build a business around if you needed to. So at worst, a trade, in my opinion, is just something you learn that gives you some intellectual stimulation, and it might be a hedge against losing a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
At best, it saves your bacon when that happens. And it's fantastic.
Yeah. I really like this perspective, man, because I think, a lot of people say like, shit, AI is going to take my job. Like, dude, I'm in the marketing world. Like I'm looking at a computer all day, right? And I help authors and all these kinds of different things. I think I have a unique set of skills. I don't think I may not be around, like I don't think that my type of work may be around for maybe the next 10 years, 15 years, as long, if I get really good at this. But even then it's still questionable, to be honest with you, because I don't know where AI is going. All of these, I don't know how the cards are going to unfold, right? So I'm thinking heavily about, how can I, like, again, figure out the things that make me unique and make sure I display those and work on those the most, right? And I think I'm a believer in human connection. I don't think that's going to go anywhere, and I think that's going to be even more valuable in the years ahead. So I just think about like group gatherings. I think about, I'm a Middle Eastern, so I think about the hookah bar. I think about, what I'm saying? I think about where are people going to gather? What can I create that, what is the in real life version of what I do today that can complement so that I'm never erased? Rather, I create a human experience here in person, whatever. How do you, so like there's a lot of knowledge workers out there, lots of people who write books, obviously, a lot of people you've met, right, that went through Scribe or, in the authoring world. What do you say to them? Like, what's the, as they look out ahead, well, I guess what I would say is, what's your advice to me? Someone like me, right? Who's in this marketing agency world, specifically for authors. What are your thoughts around this idea of human connections, building places and things that people can come and interact. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm like you. I am a glass half full optimist. So like, despite having been bit by layoffs before in the AI world, seeing people go through it, seeing the pervasiveness of job replacement, I'm still an optimist. I think if you have the right mindset, what you do, which is there are things that people, human beings, will gravitate toward. And I think almost we will gravitate toward more as we get sucked more and more into these devices. It will crave that human connection. So I think that's the right mindset. But what I would tell somebody in any industry that has potential for a level of disruption, like, I talk about it in the book, but like the golden watch era is dead. Nobody can take really any knowledge work job, and I would bucket you in that category too of knowledge work. Expect that you're going to probably retire from a specific job. That is probably long gone, or I believe it is at least. So the advice I would give is just keep an eye to what in need. Simple supply and demand. Like you said, your buddy, your neighbor, he's got hire plumbers. It doesn't mean that you need to go be a plumber, but maybe your marketing efforts and your ability to bring people together to educate them on what it would mean to be a plumber might be a great niche to go into. So I think it's just about seeing where the demand for jobs actually are. And that's what you and I were completely not coached on. And that's why both you and I in 2008 to 2010 came out saying like, hey, where's our big payday that you promised us? And they're like, oh yeah, there's absolutely no jobs to be had anywhere. Good luck. Whereas there was demand still for trades in that time frame. Sure. It was already starting to eat there, but we weren't skilled in that. We didn't have the knowledge that that was even an option. So I would just say,
or maybe like my ego was like, I'm too good to be a fucking, welder, which my man over here was already making like $200K a year, killing it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
So, I mean, that would be the advice. Like, obviously I'm pro learning a skill, of course. So like, if you have the capacity and you want to like, look at the demand, learn something on the side. There's so many opportunities at local community colleges to take night classes. That's what I did when I got my welding certification. Twice a week from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. or 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Kids were already asleep. I'd go and learn to weld. And I walked away with a certification where I could get a job if I needed to. There's a lot of those things that are out there that you can do as an adult, no matter your place in life, and do for really cheap. Like, I think that whole welding course cost me $300.
Right. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up because, man, like welding isn't going to go anywhere anytime soon, if ever. Like if you're like, you may be welding things for like the space station later, what I mean? Like in the future or SpaceX or whatever, but like that's not going to go anywhere. I mean, as far as like putting two metals together or putting two pieces of wood together, it's a skill too. Like it's not easy. And those people that's one thing I do love and admire about craftsmen, people who really genuinely are deep into that stuff because it's their art. Just like writing your book is an art, just like building a table, like I love people who love to do those things and they do it with passion and they spend their life and time and energy learning the thing. I love that. I love talking to them. Like I'm loving talking to you right now because it brings up so much passion, because I grew up an artist. So making things with your hands is like, it's just it's a way of life, Well,
I'll tell you this.
It's a human thing.
With the knowledge working thing, like one of the concepts in the book I talk about is digital dust. Like I had a career in AI where, a lot of what I do is putting PowerPoints or spreadsheets that no longer exist. But I can pick this up. I have this on my desk in front of me, even though I still am a knowledge worker, which is the first real welds I ever laid. And they're terrible. The welders looking at this, they'd be like, oh my God. But I got better. Don't worry. Not very much. A little better. And, I look at this little piece of metal with more pride than anything. Just like I'm sure when you started your, screen printing shop, like you saw someone wear your shirt.
Game changer, dude. Yeah, still is.
That was me.
Yeah, still is in a lot of ways. And there's parts of me that miss it. There's parts of me. It was hard on my back. It was definitely, I did it for over a decade, almost 13, 14 years, so I did love it. And it was very artistic and creative and business. It actually brought a lot of components together. So again, if you're a welder, it doesn't mean you're just as what you do. There's a lot of components around it. Like I met a guy who, poured concrete, and because I'm thinking about doing a piece of slab over here in my house or whatever. And, nice guy, gave me his card, whatever. But you can tell like he really knew everything there. You know what I mean? But he was a business guy. He was doing sales. He's like, oh, I think I need a new website. He's thinking largely about his company as well. He's not just going to come over and pour concrete and that's what he's good at, right? Yep. Although that's his thing. Anyways, I love this conversation so much. I think it's very important. Like you said, I think what we started with was be optimistic about the future. Yes, I believe AI is going to take certain types of jobs. I don't think it's strong enough to completely and utterly replace our entire humanity yet. Who knows what it's going to be like later. But in the meantime, I think I love this idea of like, if there's a skill out there that you can bring your knowledge to, like you said, I love this idea. Like I'm great at marketing. I can focus on, like the plumbing industry that's going to probably boom in the next 10 years. How can I educate them on how to do marketing? Because like that's still forever going to be needed. Or like to think about how they can bring a unique whatever to their community. I think that's really cool. So there's a place for technology and there's a place for human labor and work and skill. What's your favorite thing about researching this book and putting it out there?
The people I got to talk to, like I had been interacting with so many tradesmen years prior to the book that I no longer carried that stigma that was,
sure,
like just drove into my head growing up. But it was just seeing the breadth of opportunity out there. Like just every single one of the tradesmen, I would almost, and tradeswomen in the case of the book, all of them are freaking entrepreneurs. Like, there's not like a blueprint, like go to college,
right.
We're going to start like, they're like, you learn the trade, you might apprentice under someone, you might work for someone, but almost all of them eventually spin off and start their own companies. Yeah. And like hearing their stories of like learning the entrepreneurship side, like there were so many parallels between like my life of trying to be a digital entrepreneur and being a physical trade entrepreneur that go hand in hand. Like I could immediately resonate with them and we had like a mutual language that I didn't know we would have.
That's awesome.
And I think that was probably the most exciting thing, other than like the dorky history and stats piece that I just really enjoyed because that was what the trigger was for me writing the book. Is like, how did we get to where we are? That was fun. But it was that and interviewing people.
That's really cool, man. It always comes back to, I always, I think I remember my dad, when I opened my print shop, and he's like, super proud of me because when he lived in Iraq, aside from being like in theater and like a poet and a painter, he also owned, after he worked for the government, for like the local government, he laid down asphalt. He was a manager. Back then, obviously, a lot of those companies were like the government, did that stuff. So, but he worked for the local government, laid down asphalt. And I remember him and his team, like him telling me the stories about when I went back to visit, bro, he showed me the streets that he paved when he was working in the 80s and the streets that were paved recently and how crappy those were. And his streets were like amazing. He's like, because we took pride in our work. Even then, bro, different parts of the world, like this idea of taking pride in your work, knowing that you're doing something, you're serving the community in this way. Like his passion came out, bro, but he was an artist, right? Mm-hmm. And so at night he would paint and he did like posters, and then he ended up opening literally a print shop, but it was like hand painted signage, and, he was a big component of like, always know how to do something for your community. You'll never not have work. You'll never, so he was proud of me when I went to school, of course, and got my education. He really wanted me to be an architect. But when I opened up my print shop, because I couldn't get the job, he was very much proud of it because he's just like, I'm so glad that you listened and that you were still trying to provide something for your community. And that really stuck with me, man. And I think that's the coolest thing about growing a skill, doing something because you're passionate about it, but also having an optimistic view. What does my community need? And even if there's other people doing it, how can I offer it differently? The entrepreneur stuff. And then how can I get good at that thing?
Yep.
So I love this book, man. It's amazing. I haven't read it yet, so I'm excited to dive deep into it. But I knew this conversation was going to be epic. I'm definitely ordering a copy and sending it to my nephew because he needs to read it for sure. So yeah, man. On that note, what are some last thoughts about the process of writing the book? What would you say to authors out there who have these ideas around their expertise and all those kinds of things, and they're trying to figure out if a book is worth writing, a book maybe building their personal brand, any of those kinds of things? What have you experienced in doing this kind of work, and what has it brought for you that I guess has made it worth it?
First and foremost is the artistic piece. Like, just like we talked about, you seeing someone wear a shirt out there, there's not a better feeling than seeing somebody with a book, your book, in their hand. That's one. Obviously, the return of seeing it impact people is huge. I got a note the other day that somebody had picked up the Trade Gap, and they're like, I'm halfway through and I didn't realize, but you're the guy who wrote Turning Feral. I had bought that book and ordered it, and I loved it. And it was like a
That's
full circle
awesome.
moment, which was really cool.
Yeah.
But to answer your question more pointedly about like the process of writing, my wife put it to me really, really well. Turning Feral, my first book, was fantastic. It sold great. But I think we all as creatives have little gifts. And her idea, and I agree with it, is God gives us gifts of ideas. So like for me, the Trade Gap came during the time that I was unemployed, but I had this little inkling. I'm like, I should dig at this further. There might be something here that's worth sharing. And I think you owe it to yourself and whatever you believe in. For me, it's God, that if it's a gift, you should poke. And maybe you start to dig at the idea you got in the middle of the night, and you wake up the next day and you're, oh, that was a really dumb idea. I should bin that. But if that is pervasive and doesn't go away, like if you're an entrepreneur or you're a knowledge worker and you've been wanting to write a book and it hasn't left you for months, maybe years, you're actively ignoring a gift by not pursuing it. So, my wife, when we got to that point with the Trade Gap, she's like, write it. And I was like, okay. And I did.
Yeah.
So I think that's just a piece of advice. Like, the mechanics of writing, who's like, you're the man. Like, people talk to Hussein, other people that we know in our circle. Like, if you want to learn to write a book, but if you're having a hard time getting over the hump of saying, I need to write the book, remember these things are gifts. If you've been gnawing on something for months, don't take that for granted. Pursue it. Reach out to people who know how to write books, like Hussein, and you'll figure that part out. That's the easy part. Just don't give up on your dreams and the ideas that are like ruminating and sticking with you for a long time.
I love that so much, man. That deeply resonates. I can't tell y'all how many people I meet who have great ideas. They're experts, who get hit, or really like they kind of talk themselves out of writing the work or whatever because they're just a little hung up on really overthinking what's going to happen from it or the rewards from it, or is this going to be something I could really be proud of, or is this really going to impress somebody, or am I enough to write this? And it really suffocates the reason to write. And I think the reason to write or get your ideas out there is to explore, and that is literally what it means to be human, in my opinion, is to explore our humanity, explore our creativity, explore our world, and of course, other people. This is how we learn. So if one person can learn that one thing from you and it can change their life or change their perspective, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth the pursuit. But on that note, Zach, man, you've been amazing. Thank you so much, man, for coming on the show. I love this new book. Look, if you're out there, go get the Trade Gap. What is it? Learn skill. What was the subtitle?
You're gonna make me
subtitle.
Yeah, it's break the rules, learn a skill, own your future.
Break the rules, learn a skill, own the future, which is a great subtitle, to be honest with you. Like literally, I am ordering it as soon as we get off here to send it to my nephew. I know I ordered a Kindle version, but I need to order a physical version.
I'll
One
just
to
send
go
you
on
one.
my wall,
I'm gonna send
and
you
I
one.
gotta send it. No. I want to order it, and I want to put one on my wall, and I want to send one to my nephew. Thank you so much, man, for being on the show. I appreciate you so much, brother. Seriously, good luck with everything that you're doing. Happy holidays. I know they're coming around the corner here. We got trick-or-treating happening, and soon after that, holidays. It's good to see you, my friend. I'll be in touch with you via LinkedIn, and when all this is done, I think people are going to love this show. Thank you. Appreciate
Much
you.
better.
Good to see you. Bye.